These days, a lot of your buyers skip Google and ask ChatGPT or Gemini what to use. The AI gives them a short list, and they tend to run with it. So one question should be nagging at you. When they ask, does your brand come up at all? On Google, you could open Search Console or a rank tracker and see your position in black and white. In ChatGPT, there's no position, no console, nothing to log into. Most marketers I talk to are guessing, and the easy way they try to check tends to mislead them. The easy way looks obvious enough. You open ChatGPT, ask for the best tools in your space, and scan the answer for your name. Good instinct, and we'll do it properly in a moment. The trouble is, ask the same question next Tuesday, and a different list can come back. So before you read much into one answer, you should know what you're looking at and why it keeps moving. Let's build the check together. You can run the whole thing for free today. Start by writing down the questions a real buyer types when they're shopping for what you sell. Picture three kinds. A plain category one, like best project management tool. A narrower one tied to a situation, like project management for a small agency. And one aimed at a rival, like alternatives to the big name everyone knows. Those are the moments a buyer is deciding, so those are the answers you want to find yourself in. One setup note before you ask: open each engine logged out or in a private window, so your own history doesn't push you up the list. Now take that list to each engine in turn: ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, and Grok. Same questions, one at a time. As you read each answer, look for two things that often come apart. Did it name you? And did it link you? Did it send the reader to your site as a source? You can be sitting right there in the paragraph, named and described in full, with no link back at all. Hold on to that gap. It does more work than it looks. Say you ask one of them for the best email marketing tool. Back comes a paragraph naming MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, maybe a couple more, with links out to a review site and one of their own pages. If you're sitting in that list with a link of your own, you're showing up the way you want. Named further down with nothing to click, you're halfway there and no further. No sign of you at all, and you've got your answer. Walk that across all 5 engines, and you've sketched a rough map of where you stand. Worth knowing what a link looks like in the answer. Most engines tuck little numbered chips or source names next to a claim, and a few list their sources at the bottom. Click through, and you see the exact page the engine leaned on. If one of those is yours, that's a real link, the engine vouching for your page. If your name sits in the pros with no chip nearby, you're named without being backed. 2 small habits sharpen the whole thing. First, ask each question more than one way, because the phrasing changes the answer. Best tool and top picks can pull 2 different shortlists, so a single wording only ever gives you a sliver. Second, run your questions for a rival who keeps beating you to the top. Watching who that rival gets named and linked alongside shows you the sources the engine trusts in your category. Their result often teaches you more than your own does. Watch one trap while you do this by hand. The account you're signed into, or even the country you're in, can lean on the answer you get. So the rosy picture inside your own logged-in workspace can look nothing like what a stranger sees. That's the whole point of the private window, and of not trusting one warm answer. When you're unsure, put your weight on the repeated check rather than the single glance. Now for why one look fools you, because it comes down to how the answer gets made. An AI search engine doesn't work the way Google does. Google pulls up a ranked list of pages, give or take the same one every visit. These engines write you a fresh answer on the spot, a word at a time, with a little randomness dropped in on purpose so it reads like a person. That randomness is why the same question can come back differently from one day to the next, and nothing has gone wrong when it does. Add in that the model bends toward whatever it already knows about you, and 2 people asking the same thing can land on different shortlists. We see this in our own tracking, week after week. Same buying questions, same engines, 3 weeks straight. ChatGPT named the brands we tracked 23 times in week 1, then 12, then 14. Nothing changed but the week. Land on that middle reading on its own and you'd be sure you'd cratered, when all that moved was chance. And big names are exposed to this too. In one of those weeks, Salesforce slid from 9 links to 3, close to a 2/3 drop, with no announcement and no obvious cause. The engines don't even line up with each other. On our questions, they disagreed about the single top brand roughly half the time. So a clean bill of health from ChatGPT tells you almost nothing about what Gemini or Perplexity are handing that same buyer. One more thing under the hood clears up a lot of the strangeness. A fair share of the time, ChatGPT isn't even reading the live web. Only about 1/3 of the questions you ask set off a real search. For the rest, the model answers from what it picked up during training. So a page you put live last week can be nowhere in the answer, and your ranking has nothing to do with it. The model hasn't met that page yet. Engines also vary in how twitchy they are. In our tracking, Claude held steady, near identical answers every week. ChatGPT jumped around the most. So reading your check well means knowing which engine runs hot, and keeping calm on the week it dips. So if one glance lies, what's worth measuring? A few things, and not one of them is a single screenshot. Start by scoring named and linked on their own. Look at Google Analytics. Across 8 weeks of our tracking, the engines named it in roughly 140 answers and linked it in 0. The most famous tool in its category named an answer after answer and linked in none of them, because the engines cast it as the thing buyers are trying to leave. A name tells you the model knows you're there, and a link tells you it trusts you enough to send a real person over. The link is the side that carries the real weight. A bare mention still colors what a buyer thinks of you, which is worth something. But the link is what walks a live person onto your site, with the engine putting its own name behind you. Plenty of names and no links means people keep hearing about you and never arrive. You only spot that split when you score the two apart. Next, track where you sit against rivals, not only that you appear. Turning up somewhere in the answer sits a long way below being the first name in it. A brand can show in nearly every response and still never be the one the engine reaches for first. And engines part ways here, sharply. In our data, ChatGPT gave a startup the top slot about a quarter of the time, while Perplexity kept reaching for the established names. So your position is the part that carries the story, well past a plain yes or no on showing up. Then check all 5 engines, not the one you happen to like. They split about half the time, so one engine on its own is a thin slice of the whole. And read it across weeks rather than in a single sitting. A lone reading barely tells you a thing, so line up a few weeks before you believe what's on the screen. Track the same questions week on week, the noise washes out, and the real shape comes through. It helps to picture what a healthy line looks like. A brand on the way up shows more named answers one week, then a first link, then links on a second and third engine, climbing even as it wobbles. A brand in trouble holds a flat row of names with the link count stuck near 0 week after week. You can only tell those two apart by watching the line, not from one dot on it. That shape is the thing you're checking for. A word on how often. Daily feels responsible, but you already know what daily gives you: noise. Up on Monday, down on Wednesday, a week burned on swings that mean nothing. Slow it to every few days or once a week, and the jitter settles, leaving you something close to the truth. Knowing where these answers come from gives you the map of what to fix. The engines draw on a tight circle of trusted sites. In our data, the top 15 domains carried about 68% of every link the engines gave out. Sit outside that circle and you're scrapping for the leftovers with everyone else. ChatGPT especially leans on Wikipedia, where one or two of the others hardly go near it. Each engine keeps its own company, too. Grok pulls on Reddit far harder than the rest, something like 13 times as often. ChatGPT is the readiest to link straight to a brand's own site, about a quarter of the time, where Grok barely ever does. So your answer to "where do I show up" changes engine by engine, and it tells you what kind of content earns a spot there. A strong Reddit thread wins Grok. A solid third-party review wins most of the others, and a clean, factual page on the big reference sites wins ChatGPT. Once the check shows you all this, you know where to aim. Missing from Grok points you at the Reddit threads it keeps citing. Missing from ChatGPT points you at the reference pages and the reviews it leans on. The check earns its place by telling you which lever to pull next. You aim your content with evidence behind it. You don't have to map everything on day one. Pick 5 questions, 3 engines, and run them this afternoon. Write the names and links into a simple sheet, date it, and set a reminder for next week. 2 or 3 rounds in, the pattern starts to show, and you'll have a read you can trust instead of a hunch. By now, you've spotted the catch. Done right, that's a dozen questions or more, 5 engines every week, named against linked, your rank, and the sources under each answer. By hand, you're looking at hundreds of little checks a month. Few people keep that alive in a spreadsheet for long, and the week you let it slide is the week something tends to move. That's the gap a tool fills, and ours, Loudmink, is one of them. You choose the questions that matter, it runs them across every engine on a schedule, and it keeps a record of how each answer shifts, right down to the sources the engines drew from. It's the same check we built together, running on its own and staying straight with you week to week. You can see it pay off in the numbers. One brand we track, Active Campaign, went from nowhere to a link on all 5 engines inside about 3 weeks. All 5 together. That came from showing up week after week, rechecking and feeding the sources that were landing, and not from one lucky run. So once you start checking, you keep checking, because the answers carry on shifting beneath you. If you'd like to see where you stand right now, without the legwork, we put together a free scan that shows you what the AI search engines say when a customer comes looking for you. Give it a try over at loudmink.ai. Run the check, follow the trend for a few weeks, and you'll know for sure if you're showing up.